Okay, I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet on decimals because thank goodness decimals can be plugged into our calculator, so they're not quite as complicated as the fractions can tend to be. So decimal fractions and decimal numbers are referred to simply as decimals. Writing a decimal fraction as a decimal. If the decimal is less than 1, we need to make sure we place a leading 0 to the left of the decimal point. And when the decimal is more than 1, we need to make sure we drop any trailing zeros at the end. So figure 3-8 here tells you the names of the number values for the placements around the decimal point. We're starting with the millions there on the far left, working down to the 100,000s, to the 10,000s, to the thousands, hundreds, tens, and your ones or your main unit. Then we have our decimal point, and everything past that is less than 1 increment, tenths, hundredths, thousands. It does continue into the 10,000ths and the millionths even. So equivalent mixed fractions and decimals. When we are given something like a mixed fraction 15 and 3 over 10, that can be expressed as a decimal as 15.3. The mixed fraction 85 and 7/10 can be expressed as a decimal as 85.7. The reason we can do this is because it's expressed over 10, and that 7 expressed in the decimal is in the tenths place. Whereas when they give us the mixed fraction of 172 and 25 over 100, that is expressed as a decimal as 172.25. Notice that 5 lands in the hundredths place. So even though it is expressed as a decimal along the right, it is the same as what is expressed as a fraction along the left. And they give you a couple of more examples. 42 over 100 is a decimal of 0.42. And the mixed fraction 2 and 355 over 1,000 is expressed as a decimal as 2.355. That last 5 lands in the thousandths position. And again, that is what makes it possible to write that as a decimal that way. So converting fractions to decimals. Recognizing that there is a relationship between fractions and decimals is useful when it becomes necessary to convert a fraction to its decimal equivalent. We simply want to divide the numerator of a fraction by its denominator. So when they give us a fraction such as 3/4, we're literally just doing 3 divided by 4. And if you plug that into a calculator, it should give you 0.75. Make the decimal number without the decimal point to the numerator of the fraction if you need to express this as a fraction. The number 1 followed by as many zeros as there are digits to the right of the decimal point will be the denominator. So for example, the decimal 0.75 would become 75 over 100, which reduces to 3/4. So when we add our decimals, if you're doing this manually, you want to line them up as it is done at the bottom of the PowerPoint there, where the decimals are lined up. You want to write those decimals to be added in a column, aligning the decimal points, then add the numbers as in the addition of whole numbers, and place that decimal point in the sum directly under the decimal points in the column. And that is where they give you that example. Again, we are allowed to use calculators. You're allowed to use calculators on your chapter test and on your national exam. So I just say plug it into the calculator. Subtracting decimals, again, if we're doing it manually, you want to write those decimals to be subtracted in a column and align that decimal point. Subtract the decimals again as whole numbers, and then place the decimal point in the remainder directly under the decimal point in the column, as is shown here in this example. But again, we can use calculators. Just plug in 68.07 minus 17.44, and you're going to get 50.63. Multiplying decimals. So the first product of the decimals is found by usual multiplication. Next, count the number of decimal places in both numbers being multiplied. And again, this is if we are doing it manually. You're going to use a calculator. So just plug the numbers into a calculator. Do not overcomplicate this. Decimals are considerably easier than fractions just simply because we can now plug these numbers into our calculators. So they give you an example here of multiplying 3.85 times 2.2. And if you plug those numbers into your calculator, multiplying them, you're going to get 8,470. You'll notice though, had we done this written out, it says to count the number of decimal places in the multiplicand and multiplier. So we had a total of 3 digits that were past the decimal point. So they had to go back and add that decimal point between the 8 and the 4 so that we would have 3 digits behind the decimal point in our answer as well. Again, so much easier if we just plug that into our calculator. 3.85 times 2.2 is going to give you 8.47. Normal rules of division are followed when we are dividing with decimals. The difference is that you must put a decimal point in the quotient line directly above the decimal in the dividend. You must make the divisor or the number that is performing the division a whole number. Don't get too muddled up in these instructions because again, these instructions are providing for if you're performing the calculations manually out on paper without the use of a calculator. We are going to use a calculator. So we are just going to plug the numbers into the calculator. So they give us an example here of 0.6 divided by 0.02. You're literally just going to plug that into your calculator. So 0.6 divided by 0.02. And your answer comes to the same answer that they get, which is 30. Another example here is to divide 0.088 by 0.11, and you'll get an answer of 0.8. Again, don't confuse yourself with trying to learn how to do this the manual way. Use your calculator. It's okay. We're going to have calculators in pharmacy. We got calculators in the classroom, and you can use a calculator on your national exam. So do not be afraid to use your calculator. Now, let's talk about rounding. So to round a decimal, we want to obtain an answer 1 decimal place after the desired place. If the last digit is less than 5, the last digit is simply dropped. If the last digit is 5 or greater, the prior digit must increase by 1 number. Oops, wrong way. So example, round 3.57 to the nearest tenth. Well, first you have to remember that the tenths place is 1 place past the decimal. This means that we have to look to the number 7 to determine whether or not we are rounding up or we are dropping this and rounding down. 7 is 5 or greater, so this means we need to round the number in front of it up 1 digit. So we would change this answer to 3.6 and drop the 7. If we're rounding 2.896 to the nearest hundredth, well, again, first we need to know where the hundredths place is, and that is 2 places to the right of the decimal. So we're looking at the 9. That means we need to look at the digit past the 9. So we're going to look at the 6. The 6 is 5 or greater. So we would round up. It means we're going to drop the 6. The 9 becomes a 0 because if we add 1 to 9, it's 10, right? And whenever it is, there's that 0, and we're carrying 1 over to the 8. So the answer becomes 2.90. Now, please, I can't express enough in pharmacy. Do not forget, we would actually drop the last 0 in that answer. That is what we call a trailing 0. And those can lead to safety issues in pharmacy. Make sure we drop those trailing zeros. And so that was it for decimals. I hope this has helped you out. And I'll see you in our next video. Have a great day.